Hi, welcome to Tom and Jesse Talk Movies.
I'm Tom.
I am Jesse. If you have any questions or comments and you'd like to reach us for any reason, please contact us at programs@cshlibrary.org. Today, we are going to be discussing, this is going to be like the Martin Scorsese.
Yeah, this is part one of we're doing March is Martin Scorsese month. So this is part one, and we're going to be discussing some of his lesser known films.
Yes.
When everyone thinks of Martin Scorsese, they think of like The Departed and films like that.
Goodfellas,
Right.
Casino. We wanted to kind of dig a little bit deeper in his filmography and kind of take a look at some things neither one of us have seen. So.
Exactly. So the film we're discussing today is called Bringing Out the Dead, starring Nicolas Cage, among many others, Patricia Arquette and John Goodman, Tom Sizemore. Good people.
Good cast.
Good cast. So
Big Rains.
Yes. So this movie, when we were looking through the Scorsese filmography, this one I think kind of jumped out at us because this was a film that, we're both fans of Nicolas Cage's earlier stuff like this. And we're like, you know what? I don't hear too many people talk about this movie. I know I had seen it a few years ago. I don't know if I've actually seen it all the way through, though, and I really didn't remember much. So I thought this would be a good opportunity to revisit the film. And had you seen it?
I had not seen it.
You
at
had
all.
not.
I had seen the cover. I'd seen the poster. I didn't know really anything about it. So.
Right. So, the film came out in 1999, and IMDb.com describes it as haunted by the patients he failed to save. An extremely burned out Manhattan ambulance paramedic fights to maintain his sanity over 3 fraught and turbulent nights. So it's kind of like what I call like a slice of life film. We're kind of just cutting into his life, seeing what is up with this burnt out character. So before I, really get into it, what'd you think of this movie?
Overall, I really liked it. I think that you and I both kind of came to the conclusion, I don't want to overstep and approach on what you're going to say, but we both came to the conclusion that this is it's a pretty sad film.
Yes.
And I would say that it's like a perpetually sad film. It's not one of those where, the tone is pretty consistent, I'll say, in that it's consistently sad. From the beginning, when you have Patricia Arquette's character, she's her father suffers a heart attack.
Yes.
Nicolas Cage is the responding paramedic. So he goes to the house, and it kind of looks like she's about to lose her father for a brief moment. And he ends up reviving her father with some severe brain damage.
Yes.
So that's to start.
That's just start.
So things don't really begin overwhelmingly happy, and that's kind of the tone that it maintains throughout. Did you want to say anything about how it opened? Because I feel like it did set the mood pretty early on.
It does. And, it opens up, while that is the opening scene, it opens up with a narration from Nick Cage. And he's really I really liked the opening of this movie. I thought it was really well, organized, where it's we open up, he's driving the ambulance, and he has this voiceover, and he's talking about what his job is like, how it's affecting his, everyday life, his mental state. He's obviously very burnt out, definitely pessimistic, and kind of just going through the motions at this point in, his career. So that sets the tone. You're like, okay, so, it's understandable. It takes place, like I said, in Manhattan. So, and I think Manhattan definitely works as a character.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. Perfect kind of location, because when I think of Manhattan, I think of it's rush and everybody's, burnt out and so forth. So I thought setting it there was really important to tell this story. I liked the film, but it's just real. I didn't recall how depressing and sad it was. It's a very bleak film. There's not it's not a feel good movie. So, I turned to this on not really knowing what I was getting ready for. And, I liked it, but it's just you're following Nick Cage, and he, to me, I like him, but he is a hit or miss actor. And I liked him in this role. I thought I really liked his voiceover stuff throughout the film because, since we are following this character, I want to know what's going on inside his head. It was a lot more psychological than I thought it would be. And I thought what was cool was that as the film progresses, it's over like 3 nights or whatever. Each night, Nick Cage is with a different, kind of a different paramedic. The first night it's John Goodman, then it's Ving Rhames, and then it's Tom Sizemore. And I enjoyed that instead of just watching 2 guys, the same guys driving around in an ambulance. And
I totally agree.
It switched up everything, and it welcomes other personalities. So like, I really like John Goodman in the movie. Okay. He has a bit of comic relief in it, if you could call it that, because it's a dark movie. So it was nice to see him, and he threw in some lines. But one thing I really got out of this movie was that I don't really know much about like paramedics and EMT people, and they really I have a whole, even more respect for these kinds of people after watching this movie, because I could never do this kind of stuff.
I'm right there with you.
Yeah, I couldn't do that. If somebody's like going to cardiac arrest on the floor, I'm freaking out. I'm like, I can't. Right. But what was really cool was watching Nick Cage and, the workers like just get down to business and do this stuff. And, you have seconds to act, and I am not good in something like that. So, so it really made me respect these kinds of workers. And how many movies are based about on this kind of stuff? Right, so you see what these kinds of people go through every day. I was like, I couldn't do that. No wonder Nick Cage is so burnt out.
Yeah.
When he does get back to his apartment, you're like, okay, when he does have a time off, it's like, wow, man, like I couldn't do what you did.
Sure.
So
he's not getting any sleep. He's sleep deprived. Right. He knows in a matter of hours he's going to have to get up and do the same thing over and over again.
Exactly. And so as the movie's progressing, you're kind of just following Nick around, seeing him do this kind of work. And he constantly crosses paths with Patricia Arquette's character, and she was one part of the movie I was actually not crazy about,
which is a shame because
I do like her.
I like Patricia Arquette as an actress. I mean, I happen to love Boyhood, which is a film starring Ethan Hawke, and I think she plays the mother, and she's so terrific in that role. I was a little bit disappointed because she just, as a character, I just think that she really didn't do anything.
There really wasn't anything to offer with that character. It's not even her. It's just there's nothing to do. And to me, I was more interested in just being in the ambulance with the paramedics. That was far more interesting. Like, we'll drive around the city, and that's fine. But the movie, like, it focuses on, like, he'll go back to the hospital and she'll ask him, like, okay, how's my father doing? And that didn't really do anything for me. It kind of took away from some of the interest I had watching these guys just go around and do their job. So
I like the inclusion of her character because I thought that having her as sort of the focal point was another wrinkle to the already crazy and chaotic. So he's got all of these, he's getting calls from all over the place, and he's going back to the hospital. And now this is another sort of wrinkle that he has to deal with.
Right.
And while he does actually kind of start to grow fond of Patricia Arquette, I just feel like her as a character, I don't know. I didn't think that she was a very well written character, and
it really didn't go like it just and there was a result of like what happens, but like the very very end, which I'm not going to spoil obviously, but I was just like, okay, it just ends like that. Like, that's kind of sad. Like, it's a movie you walk away from and you're like, wow, man. Like, it freaks me out a little bit because it's a very realistic kind of movie. And especially now with like all the COVID stuff, everybody's health conscious. It definitely, I found it a little too unsettling for me, and that's not something I say lightly just because I watched like the most graphic horror films ever and nothing ever. But this is true to life, and Absolutely. it hits home, and it's just it's upsetting. It's a tough subject matter
because
exactly.
I mean the premise of it really is it's Patricia Arquette loses a loved one, or she's in the process of thinks losing a loved one, so it's difficult subject matter. On the subject of Patricia Arquette, one of the other reasons why I kind of appreciated the inclusion of her character, at least, maybe I'm not so crazy about the way that it was executed, but I think that where we see Nicolas Cage in the beginning, where his character he's just so overwhelmed, and not to say that he's unsympathetic, but like he's almost kind of curt in his interactions with other people when he's responding to calls, and that's not because he's being disrespectful. It's just because the character is so burnt out.
Yeah.
And why I appreciated the relationship between Nicolas Cage and Patricia Arquette's character is because you saw that he did have sort of a softer side where he does really genuinely care about Patricia Arquette's character. So you did get to see that he is a good guy. He's just completely overwhelmed.
Yeah. And as far as like it being a Scorsese film, I've actually not seen a ton of Scorsese movies. I think he's a great director. It's just a lot of that material. There's just a lack of interest with a lot of like gangster mob crime kind of stuff. I'm not really into that, but I have seen Goodfellas. I did really enjoy that. I saw that the one time. I really enjoyed that. And The Departed, I've never seen all the way through.
I have not seen it. So
but I can say it doesn't strike me as a Scorsese film. So I wonder if, I actually have not checked the box office, numbers on this film. I didn't really see how it was received. I think it's a good movie, no doubt, but I feel like it's for a specific audience.
Okay.
It does have, it's a very grainy looking film. There's a certain look, like this cinematography is really good for this kind of stuff. It's a lot of dark, grainy kind of stuff, a lot of reds and that totally matched the storyline. I like when cinematography and the storyline go hand in hand. That's important, especially for telling a really character-driven story. But I feel like I was watching a movie by a totally different director. I would say, if I had to pick, almost like a Tony Scott or like maybe Soderbergh kind of. I kind of got that kind of vibe. But the movie there's more than just watching people drive around in an ambulance. Yes, you see them go to different locations and try and revive people, and then you go back to the hospital and you see what that's like. And is there anything more chaotic than an emergency room?
No, and
I could not do this.
And I think that's what was really so startling about the movie. And the more I think about it, I guess the more that I did like the movie. And it would be maybe difficult for me to rewatch or to recommend, because I think, again, that subject matter is kind of tough. You gotta go into it with the right mindset. But I think it's just one of those things where it's just such an unromantic depiction of like what life must be like for an EMT, and that was the angle that they were going for. You kind of talked about it a little bit earlier in the diversity of the partnerships that he has with John Goodman, Ving Rhames. And you named John Goodman as a standout, which I thought he was great. Totally. I loved Ving Rhames.
I thought he was great too. And what I loved was, as his partners, like they're all so different from each other. Ving Rhames was great. He brought this light,
a little bit of lightheartedness.
He's this religious man. He's overly positive, and that was totally welcomed here, because it's, you're dealing with our main character who's clearly depressed, and so pairing him up with that, they had some. I felt the chemistry in the film, aside from Patricia Arquette's character, was great all around.
I would say if you're going to smile at all in the movie, which would be generally a rarity, it would probably be through some of the Ving Rhames scenes. He's got this Ving Rhames has a really funny dynamic with one of the operators for the
dispatcher.
The dispatcher, I'm sorry, who's voiced by Queen Latifah, and it's really like a really funny back and forth sequence that they have on a few occasions. And Nick Cage, as kind of burnt out as he is, kind of like engages in some of this humor. And then that's really the only comic relief you get, but it's so necessary because this film would be so dreary otherwise. So I do like the inclusion of those three diverse characters. Tom Sizemore just plays like a total nut.
Yeah, he's an actor who just hit all his roles are the same. He's this loudmouth, sarcastic kind of like. He gives off that drunk guy.
Always looks like he's about to snap.
Yeah, guy in a bar kind of attitude. And I get why they cast him for that role. That's fine, but total like loudmouth jerk, and that was interesting. But I thought what was really cool is how psychological the film was. Nick Cage's character often is seen like he'll be driving in the ambulance down the street. He'll see somebody like standing on like the sidewalk or the corner or whatever, and like looking at him, and you're like, is this a ghost? Is that like, what is it? And he's being haunted by his job. And you get the sense of like, one of the many reasons he's burnt out is because of, he can't save everybody. And And I think that's really important and touching subject matter. I feel the movie probably could have gone a little deeper with that. I would have liked to see a little bit more with just him, more scenes of like just him alone in his apartment. I wanted to know more about his backstory because, you know, with these kinds of like slice of life films, it's like you're just cutting into somebody's life and it's like, okay, this is what's going on, you know, but I want to know a little bit more before. And they touch upon that, but I just would have liked a little more with that.
And I think as you know, as it relates to your point, I really did like the supernatural. It's really like a supernatural element when he does kind of begins to have visions of people who he's had encounters with, people that he wasn't able to save.
Exactly.
And I think it just ties into and sort of emphasizes just what kind of a poor mental state that he's in.
Exactly.
And you kind of couple that with some of these really like frenetic camera movements, like really, really rapid cuts and, you know, blinding lights. And so that's why I really commend, I mean, Martin Scorsese doesn't need me to praise him any more than he does, but I think that like he did such a great job in sort of silently amplifying everything that was going wrong with Nick Cage. And it's nothing that he had to say how burnt out he was. It's just, you could tell.
You could just tell it was written all over his face. And I think this was a good role for him. Did you see any parallels to Taxi Driver? Because I totally do, in the sense that, I mean, obviously it being taken place in Manhattan.
Right.
I mean, whereas Taxi Driver, again, it's a similar kind of story where we're you know, following somebody doing their job, existing in the city, going around. And I've never seen. Do you like Taxi Driver?
Oh, I like Taxi Driver.
So
yeah.
Not as intense, but it explores some similar things.
Right, mental illness to a degree, I guess. I mean, Nick Cage is really just so emotionally spent. As opposed to Taxi Driver, I would say that you kind of see Robert De Niro breaking down, and it's more of a shift from optimism to cynicism.
Yes.
I think at the point where we see Nick Cage, he's already kind of over the edge, where he's just like I'm done.
I feel that if they were to do this movie now, I feel it would probably. I'm trying to like, because we had discussed this. Who could we put, like, if we were to do this now in like 2021? I think it's an interesting story to tell, no doubt. But I would totally put it in a different director's hands. Not that Scorsese did anything wrong, but I wanted to get a little bit more like, weirder stuff like that. And I feel like what actor, like, didn't we discuss like, oh, I feel like if they did this now,
Cage is pretty weird. So that's
Cage. No, Cage is definitely very strange. But you know, the film has this like late 90s kind of like underground feel to it, and it's definitely not your typical Scorsese movie.
That's who do you think could fit in the role now?
I could see Ryan Gosling doing something like this, honestly.
Okay. He's too conservative for me, though, I feel like. I don't think that he has like the dramatic range.
See, because I've seen him in a couple of roles where he's like completely lost his mind, like balls to the wall, like crazy. You know, I could see him in something like this.
I do want to ask you about something, because now I'm thinking about it, that I would like to actually give Nick Cage quite a bit of credit. I mean, you and I have seen the good and the really, 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 really not so good.
Yes.
And I think that like another reason why I really want to commend Scorsese is because I think that he was able to sort of bring out in Nicolas Cage more of an understated, sort of brooding, grieving Nicolas Cage, where unfortunately we've seen so many of Nicolas Cage, especially his later works, where it's just this overacting, and I mean everything is just like sensationalized. Every movement is exaggerated. Every sentence that comes out of his mouth is just yelling. So I think, unfortunately, when you go back and you see some Nicolas Cage performances, and you see a little bit of the way that he expresses himself, maybe a little bit loudly or emphatically, it's like, oh no, that's Nick Cage being crazy Nick Cage.
Right.
But I think that you do get a little bit of those moments where I guess he's overacting. But you know what? In that moment, though, in the context of this film, I think he does a really good job of playing just a subdued, burnt out actor. And it's not so histrionic. It's not such a an explosion of emotion all the time. I think that Scorsese had to have been like, Nick, you got to tone it down a little bit here.
Yeah.
But I think it worked well. And I have to say, this is really one of his finer performances, in my opinion. I really like it.
This was good. And it kind of went on to.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, I think that's all cool. We could really say for that film. I'd recommend it. We did get it. We both got it from the library, actually. So you can get it at the library. You could put in a reserve for it. I don't recall if it was streaming or not. I don't think so. But always, check it out. Watch a trailer on YouTube.
I would say, again, as long as you're comfortable with the subject matter, this is something that maybe I had read the synopsis and it didn't jump out at me immediately, but I think as a credit to really what the film is, and it's different, it's just a different feeling movie than so many other generic sort of dramas. I mean, it's different.
Exactly.
So I would say that it's worth the watch as long as you feel
it's worth a
watch.
Now I know next week on Monday, is it the 15th? Well, yes, on the 15th, Monday, I know the Oscars the nominations come out, and we did spend a month doing Oscar month, which was fun. I would love to, I mean, speaking of an Oscar-winning director, everything, I feel like it would be cool to maybe talk about that briefly.
Sure.
And we could, go over, since it's Martin Scorsese month, we could go over some of his past films and tie it into the next Scorsese film we're talking about is After Hours, which I've never seen.
I have never seen either.
Yeah.
Dark comedy, 1980 something or other.
Yeah.
80s. I can't ill-equipped to answer that, but certainly let's talk about.
I think that would be good. So.
Okay, so thank you so much for joining us.
Yes.
Again, if you have any questions, concerns, comments, please contact us at programs@cshlibrary.org. And we thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you. We appreciate it.
Thank you.